Hey guys, how are you all? Welcome back to my channel. Today we will see what if Naruto hates Team 7 Chunin exams Sasuke bashing. If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments. It was a peaceful, sunny day in Konoha as Team 7 waited for their new Chunin sensei to come and get them. Like all the other teams to graduate from the academy that year, the three genin of Team 7 had been assigned to each other as a team, and a Chunin sensei to guide and teach them. However, while the other Chunin had come and taken their teams, theirs had not even shown up. "Oh man," exclaimed Uzumaki Naruto, the loudmouthed dead last of the academy graduates. "Where in the Hokage's name is sensei?" he asked impatiently. "Why so impatient, Dobi?" asked Uchiha Sasuke, the #1 rookie of the year, a smirk adorning his face. "Can't wait to get yourself killed?" "Teme," screamed Naruto. "I just want him to hurry up so I can start training to become Hokage." Replied Sasuke. "And pigs will fly." Naruto was about to give Sasuke a piece of his fist when the remaining member of the three-man cell spoke. "Naruto, stop disturbing Sasuke-kun and go train or something. Kami-sama knows you need it." Haruno Sakura was the smartest genin in their batch, getting the highest marks in the written portions of the exam while scoring average in other departments. On the other hand, Sasuke had gotten the overall highest marks and was thus named the #1 rookie of the year. Naruto stood stunned for a while at the girl's words before lowering his head and mumbling out a soft, depressed, "Sakura-chan." Though it hurt him to hear her say that out loud, he knew she was right. He had gotten the lowest results of all and the only reason he had graduated to genin had been because of that incident. Naruto pulled himself together and walked over to the farthest seat from the other two where he sat down and started recalling the events of the previous night. He ran through the fine details of the events, starting from his use of Oiroke no Jutsu in order to knock out the Hokage, to his theft of the Forbidden Scroll, his learning of the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu and finally to Mizuki's apprehension. He personally considered himself lucky to have taught himself the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu in one night as well as to have been able to produce so many flawless clones. He himself understood that it had been the mass numbers that had gained him victory over Mizuki and not his battle skills. He shuddered at the thought of what would have happened had he not been able to make so many clones. He hadn't learned much else that night, apart from the revelation of his tenant who resided inside the seal on his belly. And to make things worse, he had even lost the small scroll he had copied some of the other forbidden jutsu to. Naruto's eyes widened as the realization hit him. There was always a reason for things to be forbidden and he recalled the Sandaime had been very forceful in asking him not to teach the Kage Bunshin to anyone. That meant that if anyone else found the scroll and the jutsu leaked out, the Sandaime would know exactly who to blame for it. He needed to find that scroll as soon as possible. Now if only he could be at two places at once. The answer struck him like a thunderbolt from Kami himself. Of course, the Kage Bunshin, but how would he perform the technique without it being seen by both Sakura and Sasuke? It took him only a minute of thinking before the blonde boy got frustrated. After all, he wasn't known for his logical skills. He walked over to the window hoping some fresh air would help. He leaned over the window sill and looked over towards the forest where he had hidden the scroll. If only he could find a way to create the clones. Naruto sighed and stood up only to bang his head on the raised window and fall all the way to the ground. Both his teammates saw him fall and they shook their heads in disbelief. Meanwhile, somewhere in midair, a blonde genin smiled to himself as he covered himself in the smoke of his new jutsu. All had gone according to his plan. Moments later, the blonde boy returned to the classroom, scratching the back of his head and grinning sheepishly as he entered. The antics of the dead last caused the #1 rookie of the year to roll his eyes. How in 1,000 years had that Dobi managed to graduate? However, Sakura noticed something about the dead last that Sasuke didn't. Despite the large cloud that had formed on Naruto's impact on the ground, there seemed to be not even one speck of dirt on his body except his feet on which she would have expected even him to land on. Yet, Sakura decided to let it pass this one time. After all, what could a Dobi possess that could be even remotely interesting to her? Naruto calmly walked over to his seat in the far corner of the table and sat in anticipation of his new sensei, his mind drifting, half worried about whether he could find the scroll his clones were looking for. Another hour had passed and there had still been no sign of their sensei. Both Sasuke and Sakura had fallen asleep due to the pure boredom of the hour spent, Sasuke in his usual evil gaze pose and Sakura face towards her crush. Naruto had had it. This sensei thought he could treat them any way he wanted due to them being mere genin. But he was wrong and Naruto would make sure he found out the hard way. A grin crossed his face and he dragged a desk closer to the door. The soft sound of the desk gently dragging on the floor woke Sakura, who never had been a heavy sleeper. She opened her eyes just in time to see the orange-clad boy climbing onto the desk, something rectangular in hand. Sakura stifled a yawn as she sat up and stretched. "Naruto, what do you think you are doing?" she asked softly, half forgetting where she was, and who she was talking to. A grinning face glanced back at her as the boy in question wedged a dusty eraser into the partially opened door. A little payback for keeping us waiting for so long. Sakura looked at him quizzically as he got off and placed the desk in its original position. "Do you think it will work? He is a Chunin after all," she said, though her inner self screamed at her to join in on the prank. Naruto just shrugged. "Who knows? It's worth a try though," he said. Naruto felt a slight tingling in the back of his brain as a clone of his dispelled. Though he had already experienced a wave of chakra-exhausted dispels, the dispelling was not something he had gotten used to. Yet, this last dispel had not been due to chakra exhaustion, but rather due to being bitten by a snake when the clone had accidentally stepped on it. It was an unusual experience for him, to feel exactly what the clone felt as it died, the phantom pain of the fangs biting into his leg and injecting whatever poison it possessed. However, like the last wave of dispelling, this had also taught Naruto a lot about the jutsu and the possible reasons for it being forbidden. Unlike the normal clone jutsu he knew of, each shadow clone required a lot of chakra from the user to create, though he didn't know exactly how much. On top of that, the technique created solid bodies that could interact and speak however he wanted them to. These clones could also go far from their creator and still stay intact. The disadvantage was that it took one blow, even a non-fatal one, to dispel the technique. Interestingly, the technique also transferred all the experiences the clone had back to the user when the clone dispelled, and with the experience he had, he knew that absorbing this information could be dangerous in large amounts. However, the possibilities of usage for this technique would be endless. He would need to find out more from his sensei when he met him about this forbidden technique before he could put it to use though, because Uzumaki Naruto knew that nothing good came without a catch. Speak of the devil, he thought as the sound of footsteps reached his ears through the hallway. Here comes the lazy guy right now. The footsteps stopped at the door, and their first glimpse of their sensei was his hand coming through the slightly ajar door. Both Naruto's and Sakura's eyes darted to the duster wedged, both of them silently wishing for their sensei to fall for the little trick. A face appeared from the other side as a silver-haired man poked his head through the door before opening it further. Everything moved in slow motion, the duster taking all the time in the world to fall straight on the Chunin's head, the dust of the chalk blowing up in a small cloud at the moment of impact. Naruto immediately burst out into laughter, leaving an agape Sakura and a still sleeping Sasuke, who stirred at the amount of noise Naruto was making. Inner Sakura immediately jumped up with a shout of victory at the success of the small prank, while Sakura herself was wondering if this was the skill of a Chunin. The masked face raised a quizzical eyebrow at the rolling ball of orange on the floor and Sakura struggled to speak, afraid that their sensei would be angry at them for playing such a trick. GG Gomen sensei. It was all his idea. Sakura was cut off short by a waving hand. My first impression of you is that I do not like you. The words caused Sakura's head to hang, knowing that all chances at a good first impression had been blown by her mischievous teammate. However, I will still give you a chance at becoming ninja. If you are interested, meet me up on the roof in 5 minutes. Without a further word, he was gone, leaving the three genin to themselves. Sakura immediately turned around to wake Sasuke up, allowing Naruto to walk out of the room unnoticed. The only thing on his mind right now was retrieving the scroll one of his clones had found just before it dispelled. If it were possible for someone to see rage, the whole of Konoha would see it rolling of the academy's rooftops in waves. Needless to say, Sakura was very pissed. It had been bad enough that she had had to wake Sasuke up to come to the roof, ending in him giving her a cold stare as he stormed off, but Naruto had seemingly disappeared on his way up. The Chunin seemed the least bothered with the fact that one of the three were missing, busying himself with a book that was labeled Icha Icha. Sakura had seen one of those books at her place once when she had been cleaning her dad's closet, and her knowing exactly what that book contained did nothing to calm her rage. She also noted that Sasuke was trying to snatch a few winks in the meantime as well. The silver-haired Chunin finally spoke, snatching a glance at the sun. "Well, we've been here for 5 minutes already. If your teammate is not here in 5 more minutes, then the 3 of you are going back to the academy." This woke up the nodding off Sasuke, who immediately jumped up, furious. "What?" he exclaimed. "You are going to send Me, the #1 rookie of Konoha, back to the academy just because the dead last of our batch chickened out?" "Yup," replied the Chunin, nonchalantly, not even bothering to look up from his book. "Each of you is part of a 3-man cell. And as such you are a team. And without your teammate, neither of you are going any further." The color literally drained from Sakura's face at the Chunin's words. Another year at the academy was something serious. She would have no problems graduating again, yet the chances of being put on Sasuke's team again was slim to none. She had considered herself very lucky this time around, and she could not help but believe that her luck may not stand up to the test of time. Sasuke scoffed and crossed his arms across his chest in a proud manner. "There is no way that is going to happen," he said, his confidence in his words apparent as he spoke. "I am an invaluable asset to Konoha, and there is no way that the Hokage would let me go into the academy for another year. He will put me in another team and send another weakling to the academy. Maybe that fat Akamichi or that stuttering Hyuga girl." The statement the Uchiha made got a reaction from both other occupants of the roof. The Chunin's eye had left the page of the book he was reading and was rested on the boy in front of him while Sakura stared at him with shocked eyes. She had come to know Hinata from the academy class and had grown to like the gentle and caring Hyuga. Sakura had no doubt that once Hinata got over her lack of self-confidence that she would be the #1 kunoichi of their age. Never, even in her wildest dreams, had she thought Sasuke would think of Hinata like that. Her opinion of the cool and mysterious Uchiha pegged down one notch, finally, as she saw one blemish upon his normally attractive facade. Sakura was about to raise the question of why Sasuke thought them weaklings when the exit to the roof flew open to reveal a panting Naruto. The look of relief flashed across her face as he slowly walked over to him. None of the 3 genin noticed the Chunin lift his headband across the left eye for a second. "Okay. It's getting late already, so let's get this over with fast. I want you to introduce yourselves. Likes, dislikes and ambitions. Let's start with the latecomer." Naruto winced as the Chunin looked at him in eagerness. He had been found out, though he had no clue how, that he was a clone. The quick meeting line was an overly obvious hint. Naruto was about to oblige the Chunin when Sakura spoke out. "Wait, you want us to introduce ourselves while we know nothing about you?" she said. "How about you give us an example?" The Chunin sighed audibly, not too happy with having to go first, or having to go at all. Fine. My name is Hitaki Kakashi. My likes are reading literature." Kakashi could have sworn that he had heard Sakura scoff at that statement. "My dislikes are people who are too full of themselves, and I have no ambition." Blondie, continue. Kakashi sighed audibly once more. In truth, he had not come with the intention of giving them any information apart from his name, but the appearance of a Kage Bunshin instead of one of his students had put an unexpected twist in his plans. He couldn't help but smile as Naruto stood up to speak. The boy had gotten the hint after all. Maybe he wasn't as stupid as they say. "My name is Uzumaki Naruto. I love ramen and I hate the 3 minutes it takes for the ramen to be prepared. My ambition is to become Hokage." As soon as he sat down, he received an appraising look from Kakashi as well as an odd one from Sakura. "He sounds just like Sensei when we were young," thought Kakashi with a smile. Sakura meanwhile was astonished at how calmly and quickly he had given the information and at the same time failed to confess his love for her. However, she decided to ask Naruto later as Kakashi turned to her. "Okay, Pinky, you're next." Sakura rolled her eyes at the nickname Kakashi had called her, but let it go considering the strange occurrences of the day so far. "My name is Haruno Sakura. My likes are glance towards Sasuke followed by a blush. My ambitions are another glance towards Sasuke followed by another blush, and my dislikes are those who are not the people they seem to be." Though her sentence was meant in general, Sakura was sure she saw a brief flash of hurt pass through Naruto at her mention of dislikes and decided to add it to her list of questions to ask Naruto later. After all, she couldn't afford to miss hearing Sasuke's introduction. There could be something in there that could help her claim the heart of the man she loved. Kakashi barely raised his eyes from his literature before he said one word. Uchiha. The Uchiha stood up and put his hands in his pockets before speaking, not to anyone in particular, but to everyone that would be listening. Uchiha Sasuke. I like power and people that possess power. I dislike weaklings and those that get in my way. My ambition is the revival of my clan and to kill a certain someone. Great, thought Kakashi, an avenger much like myself when I was younger. He saw that Naruto was not paying much attention to Sasuke anymore but was concentrating on him. Sakura meanwhile was in dreamland, imagining Sasuke reviving his clan with her by his side. Kakashi's words, however, brought her out of her daydream. Okay, I have to go and catch up with a friend. So I want you to meet me at training ground number 4 at 8 o'clock in the morning. Sharp. And don't have breakfast or you'll throw up. He then poofed away in a cloud of smoke before either of the genin could say anything any further. Naruto was the first one to recover from the sudden shock of abandonment, scratching his head before saying, "Well, it seems we are done here. So I'll be going." "Yeah." Sakura could barely manage a nod before the orange ball of energy jumped from rooftop to rooftop going in the general direction of the Konoha village square, her thoughts being along the lines of, did he really not ask me out on a date? Sakura didn't really care though, now that it was only her and Sasuke on the rooftop of the academy. It was the perfect chance for her to get her first kiss, but somehow, for reasons that avoided her, she just didn't want it that day. Sighing out loud much like Kakashi had, Sakura just walked off towards the stairs with her hand on her head as if she had developed a sudden headache. All she knew was that Ino would have a laugh when she finally heard the story. Things could not be peachier for Sasuke. The dobi was gone and so was the fangirl. Both of them out of his way, though it was temporarily, and he hoped that they would stay that way throughout their time as a team. He had one final thing to whisper out to the world before he jumped off much like Naruto. Don't get in my way. Or else. Getting to the forest had been easy for Naruto. Once he had gotten out of that classroom, things had been a piece of cake. However, finding the exact tree the last clone had dropped the scroll near was difficult in a forest of very similar trees and had taken a lot of time. Luckily, his plan of sending a clone made from the last dredges of his chakra to the meeting with his sensei had worked, and he knew everything that had happened in the meeting as if he had been there himself. However, he still had no clue how Kakashi had discerned him from his clone so easily. And there was also the question of where he had disappeared to as soon as the meeting had been finished. The answer to his question was standing in front of him with the scroll in his hand. "Ah, Naruto-kun, how nice to see you in person." Naruto didn't know whether the happiness in the Junin's voice was faked or not, but he knew that what he had been looking for now rested in the very Junin's hands. "What are you doing inside a forest? Looking for something?" asked Kakashi as he hefted the scroll, tossing it a few times into the air. Naruto scratched his head. It was apparent that he had been found out once again. This Chunin is something else, thought Naruto, realizing that Kakashi had tracked his chakra signature from all the way inside the village to this very spot. "I know what this scroll is, Naruto-kun," said Kakashi, looking down at the blonde boy, his tone serious, yet surprisingly gentle. "I hope you do what's right with this," finished the Chunin as he handed the scroll back to Naruto. The blonde looked at Kakashi for a second, not sure if he was joking. The Chunin was handing him the scroll, fully knowing what it contained, and was still trusting him. Kakashi spoke as soon as Naruto had taken the scroll, the blonde still obviously confused as to why he had gotten the scroll back. "Since you are here, and who I met was a Kage Bunshin, I am assuming that you already know of the information gathering ability of the technique." The boy nodded, allowing Kakashi to continue. "What is interesting is that everything the Kage Bunshin learns is also learned by the user once the clone is dispelled. However, large amounts of information can overload one's brain and put them in a state of coma or outright kill them." Naruto looked at the Chunin, not sure where the silver-haired man was taking this lecture. "My point is, you have a lot to catch up on, knowledge-wise, and training-wise. Maybe it is best to use the Kage Bunshin to catch up." The light bulb lit up as if it had gotten that surge of electricity that it had needed really bad. It made sense really, now that he thought about it. It would save him time than relearning everything on his own. But, remember, it only applies to your knowledge and familiarity with jutsu. Your physical abilities will not be transferred. So you will have to work on them by yourself. So that was the catch of this particular jutsu. Mentally shrugging to himself, Naruto decided that what he got in return for the catch was better than most, and that he would still make the best use of it. Seeing the thoughts flit through Naruto's mind, Kakashi smiled, before adding in his own sensei's touch to the whole meeting. I suggest you start with chakra training. You do need to learn not to waste so much chakra creating a clone. Naruto's eyes widened, so that's how Kakashi had figured out that it was a clone. The release of chakra combined with the small amount left in the clone would be abnormal for someone who had created hundreds a few nights ago. Kakashi smiled at the boy. Remember our meeting tomorrow and don't tire yourself out, he said before disappearing in a cloud of smoke after giving him the trademark Kakashi goodbye wave. Naruto stood still for a moment before starting off towards the Hokage Tower. He needed to give the old man the scroll, and besides, he had no idea where else to get help on chakra control. On the other side of town, Sakura was having one of her worst days. The first thing she had done once the meeting had ended had been to visit her childhood best friend to tell her about the events of the day. It was Ino's reaction that Sakura had not liked. Ino had been flabbergasted. She had not known what to think when Sakura had told her the story. The look that Sakura had given her when she had told her the story meant that it was something more than an odd occurrence for her friend, and being a fellow Uchiha fangirl, Ino had decided to try and lighten up the mood. Hehe. Maybe you should give up on Sasuke-kun, Sakura. After all, that was probably your only chance to get ahead of me. The joke had not really been a joke for Sakura, and the rest of the time between them had been spent in awkward silence before Sakura had gone home. All of this, starting from the time they waited for their sensei, had basically ruined her day, and Sakura had gone to bed without having dinner. The thoughts had kept running riot inside her head and had made her not want to do anything. Even now, they were preventing her from falling asleep, and she needed her beauty sleep if she wanted to remain beautiful for Sasuke. There was a slight knock on her door, and Sakura glanced to see her mother poke her head through the door. "Are you okay, sweetheart? You haven't had your dinner tonight?" asked the pink-haired woman. "No, Mom. I don't really feel like eating tonight," said Sakura as she turned away once again. "Are you on another diet again?" asked Haruno Sayaki, hoping to lighten the mood, but decided to probe again once she got no response from her daughter. "Want to talk about it, darling? Maybe it will help." Sakura thought about it for a second. She had gone to Ino hoping for some advice on it and had gotten none, even though Ino was considered an expert at giving advice to girls her age. Might as well try this, she thought. It couldn't become any worse. Sakura told her mother everything that had happened, going into detail and voicing her questions where she was confused and needed answers. There was a momentary silence after Sakura had finished speaking before her mother spoke. "Naruto is the boy in orange, right?" Sakura nodded and saw her mother's eyes fall in sadness. "From what I know of him, he has suffered a very hard past, Sakura-chan. That reason that he is so loud and obnoxious is to cover his suffering up. It is the only way that he can gain some attention. I feel that the boy you saw today is a glimpse of who Naruto truly is beneath the act." The tears glistening in Sayaki's eyes made Sakura wonder what would cause her mother to cry. Surely his past is not harder than Sasuke-kun's. Naruto never had to see his family die. Sayaki looked at Sakura. True, Naruto never had to see them die. There was a slight pause before Sayaki continued. Both of them have very different pasts, Sakura. Sayaki only shortened her daughter's name when she was sad. That was the only time she shortened anyone's name. One who has had love, has lost it, and does not want it again, and another who has never had love and wants it, but I do not think he will ever get the love that he deserves. Sakura frowned at the statement her mother had made. "Don't worry, Mom. I will make sure Sasuke-kun gets the love that he deserves," she said, smiling. Sayaki sighed inwardly and stood up, giving Sakura a warm smile. "I'm sure you will get whatever you set your mind to, sweetheart. But at all times, keep an open mind and an open heart. Then you will understand what I am talking about. For now, go to sleep. You have to meet your team tomorrow, and you will need to get as strong as you can for when he will need you." Sayaki bent over and gave her a kiss before walking out the room, the tears finally falling from her eyes. There was a boy, a very needy boy, in front of her that needed love, and again there was nothing she could do. If only you knew his burden, Sakura-chan, and the sacrifice he has made for the whole village. Then you would love him too. Sakura's alarm brought her out of her restless sleep at exactly 6 a.m. She silently cursed herself for setting it so early, but it was the beginning of her ninja career and she wanted to look her best for it. She lazily got up and went to the bathroom. She spent half an hour in the shower and another full hour doing her hair before she went downstairs to say bye to her mom. However, it was Sayaki who saw Sakura first. "Hey, I made breakfast for you," said Sayaki as she showed a plate full of scrambled eggs and toast to her daughter. "Mom, Kakashi-sensei said not to have breakfast before our meeting," said Sakura as she looked at the plate in front of her. Though Kakashi had told them not to have breakfast, the sight of her favorite made her want to have some. "Oh," said Sayaki, her voice filled with faked sadness at her daughter's rejection of her cooking. "Not even a little? I'm sure your sensei will not mind." Sakura shrugged. "Guess it wouldn't hurt to have just a little of that," as she sat down at the table. A couple of toasts later, Sakura decided she had had enough and that she should leave to the training ground before she became late. To be honest, Sakura had not known where training ground 4 would be until she had seen a signpost that had pointed her in that direction. And when she arrived, she was surprised to see Sasuke already there leaning against a tree, his arms folded across his chest as usual. He spoke once she got a little closer. "You're late." Sakura faltered a little as she approached her crush. She had never expected such a cold statement to come from him. Besides, she was the second to arrive, Kakashi and Naruto hadn't even shown up yet. There was no way the meeting was commencing without either of them. All she could do was mumble a swift sorry as she sat near a tree on the opposite side of the field. All she had wanted to do was to strike up a decent conversation with him, and he had shot that plan to pieces seemingly effortlessly. However, it also gave her time to think about what her mother had said the previous night. Sakura knew of the Uchiha massacre a few years back. The whole village knew of it. She knew that every single member of his clan had been killed by Sasuke's elder brother Itachi. Everyone except Sasuke himself. He had had a family. He had had love, and that was why he would want it, right? Yet, her own justification did not sit well with her. He had half of the total number of single girls in Konoha running after him. He could choose any of them and they would willingly give him everything he needed or wanted. Half of the village's adults felt sorry for him and would also do almost anything to help him. He could have all that love if he had wanted it. If, Sakura realized. But he didn't want it. Why? What could he be so focused on that he would ignore the people begging to love him? He had said that one of his goals was to kill a certain man. Who? Itachi? If it was indeed Itachi, Sasuke would need to be really strong. Was that why he needed power? Was he so focused on gaining that power to avenge his family that he didn't want anything else than that power? There were so many questions she wanted to ask, so many answers that she needed in order to figure out the riddle that her mother had implanted in her mind last night. It was during this train of though that the orange figure of Naruto caught her eye as he ran into the field. Naruto looked as if he had had a panic attack, looking everywhere fervently. "Is training over? Am I too late?" he asked, giving her a worried look. "No, Sensei hasn't arrived yet. We're waiting for him," replied the girl. She saw Naruto relax visibly and crumple next to a tree a decent distance away from her. He seemed exhausted to her, like he had not had a proper night of sleep. "Are you okay? You look exhausted," said Sakura to the blonde boy, causing Naruto to look up. He looked at her curiously for a second and spoke when Sakura raised an eyebrow. "No yelling at me for being late? No pounding on my head today?" he asked, and she shook her head. "No, not today. Don't really feel like it." Naruto just shrugged. "I was up late training last night and I passed out. Woke up a few minutes ago and ran here," he said as he leant back into the tree, massaging his sore legs and arms. "Naruto!" exclaimed Sakura as she sat upright, the realization of what had happened causing the concern she felt skyrocket. "That's chakra exhaustion. It's dangerous, you should go see a doctor." "I'm fine, Sakura-chan," he said. "No, it's not okay. You might have damaged your chakra coils. You have to go see one, Naruto," she yelled. "The Dobi stays," said a deeper voice as Sakura turned to see Sasuke looking at them. "I don't want to get sent back to the academy because of him being absent." That was the second time during the same hour that she had heard such a cold statement from Sasuke. She didn't understand why Sasuke didn't want to send Naruto to the hospital. Naruto could be in a life-threatening situation or even career-threatening if he didn't get it treated, and Sasuke was forcing him to stay. For what? Sasuke's own career? She was about to speak up when Naruto spoke. The Teme is right, Sakura-chan. If it were only my career at risk I would have gone. But it's also both of yours, and I will stay so that you can have a chance. If it will make you happy I won't use any chakra till I go to the hospital. Sakura found herself seeing him in a new light. No longer the loud and abrasive boy he was, but the person who would risk his life for his teammates. He was taking a risk, for the both of them, for their careers with no such concern for himself. If this was who Naruto was truly behind his facade, she decided that she could grow to like him with time. Fine, she growled, not happy with the compromise, but seeing no other choice. No chakra at all, and I'm coming with you to the hospital. Naruto's sweat dropped. He had been asking her to go on dates for so long and all it took was for him to go to the hospital due to chakra exhaustion for her to come along. He wished he had thought of this sooner. It's okay Sakura-chan. I can go by myself. In truth, he had been hoping not to go to the hospital. It wasn't his favorite place in Konoha for the way the majority of the doctors and nurses treated him, but he did need to see one. But the last thing wanted was for Sakura to come along. He didn't want her to see how they treated him. She wouldn't understand. No, she replied, her voice forceful and determined. I'm coming. And if the two of you are not happy with it then you two can train alone. Sakura had literally trapped Naruto. There was no point in him staying if it meant she wouldn't join and he would still have to go to the hospital. Okay, Sakura-chan. You can come with me. He said, finally giving in, his eyes fixed on the angry eyes of the Uchiha who had fixed his on her. Sakura gave him a thin triumphant smile which he tried to return to the best of his ability. It was at that specific moment that Kakashi decided to appear in his trademark puff of smoke. Sorry, I just think he has a lot of trademarks. Good, you're all here, he said eyeing each and every one of them. Since today is our first day as a team, we are not going to be doing any missions or training. He paused when he saw the confused look Sakura was giving him. Naruto seemed like he would nod off again any second and Sasuke wore the same expression he always wore. Today, we are going to do your final test before becoming a genin team. This last sentence got the reaction Kakashi had wanted from all three of his students. Sakura and Naruto jumped to their feet with screams of, "What?" while Sasuke glared at him. Kakashi dropped to the ground from his position on the tree and walked over to them. Yar. Did Iruka not tell you about the final test? The test with a success rate of 66%? 66%? Thought Sakura. No, Iruka's sensei didn't tell us of such a test. Kakashi scratched his chin. Too bad for you. The ninja world is a tough place. A world of the survival of the fittest. And as such, we have a final test for all academy graduates to take, in order to weed out the weak and admit the strong. Kakashi proceeded to take out 2 small bells from his pocket. Your test comprises of taking one of these bells for me. The one who has a bell at the end of the time allocated will be a genin from here on. The ones who don't get a bell will be sent back to the academy or if you chose so, you can quit as a ninja. But Kakashi-sensei, there are only 2 bells. Pointed out Naruto. Yup, you are right. It is to ensure that at least one of you 3 will get sent back to the academy. Kakashi took out a small timer and placed it on a rock in front of the 3 genin. Timer is set to lunch. Those who have a bell at the end of the time will get lunch. Those who don't will not get lunch. Instead you will be tied to one of these posts and will have to watch me eat my lunch in front of you. You will be given a second opportunity at a bell after lunch. Now remember, I am a Chunin, and you genin have no chance of getting a bell from me without coming at me with intent to kill. You can begin when I say go. A moment of silence was shared between the 4, as Kakashi waited for the words to sink in. Lifting his hand up for a second, he looked at the 3 genin before he threw his hand down, his voice resounding in the air as he yelled the magic word. Go! Kakashi watched as all 3 of the genin disappeared into the trees. Kakashi smiled. It seemed that the information given to him about Naruto by his academy teachers were once again wrong. They had made it seem like he was the gung-ho type to charge into everything head first. Yet again, the blonde boy had surprised him. Maybe he was maturing up a bit. Sasuke jumped from a tree in front of him, heading straight towards Kakashi. A clone and a hench? Thought Kakashi. Maybe Naruto hasn't matured after all. It was when Sasuke started to form hand seals that Kakashi knew it was not Naruto. Kaiten, Gukakyu no Jutsu. Came the call as Kakashi barely managed to jump back to avoid the fireball. What a guy, he thought, to be able to use the Gukakyu at such a level at such a young age. Sasuke gave Kakashi no time to think, immediately appearing to his side and aiming a sidekick to Kakashi's face. Kakashi blocked the kick with his arm and caught Sasuke's punch with his other hand. Sasuke immediately rotated his body and swung his other leg at Kakashi again, causing the Chunin to release Sasuke's hand to block the incoming leg. This gave Sasuke the necessary momentum to turn himself upside down and try to grab one of the bells hung on Kakashi's belt. The Chunin's eyes widened as he saw the Uchiha taking a swipe at his bells and jumped back, Sasuke's fingers barely touching the strings and making them jingle. Sasuke decided to give the Gukakyu another chance, and at such close range, he was sure he would get Kakashi. However, he was astonished to see that Kakashi had disappeared amidst the fire. He was sure that his fireball wasn't strong enough to incinerate a Chunin. So where could Kakashi have gone? Left? Right? Behind? Above? No. Below. Sasuke barely managed to look down as a hand broke out of the ground and grabbed his ankle. Sasuke felt himself being pulled under until his whole body was underground except for his head. "Doden, Shinju Zanchu no Jutsu," said Kakashi as he stood behind Sasuke. "Good but not good enough. I wonder where your teammates are." Another moment of silence passed as Kakashi looked at his surroundings curiously while Sasuke tried to burn a hole through Kakashi's forehead with his eyes. "Ah well, time to go look for them," said the Chunin as he stood up and walked away, not even caring that Sasuke was not too far away from him. Sasuke watched Kakashi walk away, furious that the Chunin had left him buried. Meanwhile, Naruto had caught up with Sakura and the both of them had planned on how to get the bells from Kakashi. Sakura watched as Naruto jumped down into the clearing to wait for Kakashi by the tree they had started out from under. She decided that this would be the right time to recall what Naruto had said once the test had started. "Sakura, this is the person that said that he would fail you both had I not shown up for our introductory meeting. There is no way he would send one of us to the academy. This is a teamwork test. The bells, the lunches. They are just to turn us against each other. Think about it. There is no way one of us can take on a Chunin and come out on top." It all made sense once he had said it. Why indeed create a three-man cell if they were going to fail one anyways? To make things easier, Kakashi had even said it at the meeting. The question was, how had she, nor Sasuke not noticed it before the dead last of their class? Sakura's senses tingled as she felt Kakashi's chakra signature come closer. She saw him walk up to Naruto and speak. "So, how about we cut the act, Naruto? We both know you are smarter than you look." Naruto shrugged, his hands in his pockets. "Between the both of us, sure. But I consider it my trump card to use against the other genin," he said with a slight smile. "Alright," conceded Kakashi. "But remember that this particular trump card will only work a total of once." Naruto nodded as he dashed at Kakashi, his arm cocked back for a lethal punch. "Going full frontal, I wonder what you have planned, Naruto," thought Kakashi as he met Naruto's wild charge head-on. The Chunin jumped up at the last second, causing Naruto to stumble at the sudden movement of his intended target. However, the blonde boy recovered quickly, ducking into a forward roll, using both his hands to propel him towards a mid-air Kakashi, lashing a few kicks out as he neared Kakashi. The mid-air Chunin turned slightly in the air, causing Naruto to barely miss landing a hit on him. Naruto had just landed when Kakashi appeared at his side, aiming a mid-height kick towards the blonde boy's head, hoping Naruto would jump back to avoid it and fall straight into the trap that Kakashi had set up. However, it surprised Kakashi when Naruto ducked under his leg and swung a powerful uppercut aimed at his groin. Left with no move to make, Kakashi used the Kawarimi no Jutsu to transport him to safety and causing Naruto's fist to hit a log. Naruto heard the sound of clapping and turned around to see Kakashi applauding him. "I'm impressed, Naruto-kun. You almost had me there," said Kakashi. Naruto shook his head. "No, I wouldn't have managed to push you this far had you been going all out on me." Kakashi nodded. "Want to try again?" he asked, pushing his hand into his pocket as he walked closer. Naruto wobbled on his feet as he sat on the ground and waved his hand. "No, I'm out. My vision's already fuzzy. I'm not sure I can even try to keep up with you anymore." Kakashi watched as the orange-clad boy leaned back against the tree and closed his eyes. Naruto had drastically improved overnight, and Kakashi decided that this deserved him a little rest and one of the lunches that he had brought along with him. It was the least to say that Kakashi was happy with Naruto's effort. Kakashi was walking over to Naruto when a sudden shadow fell over him. He managed to turn in time to see Sasuke complete the final handseal for the Gukakyu and take in a deep breath. Kakashi barely had time to Kawarimi away before the fireball consumed the entire area around where he was standing. Kakashi paled the moment he had reappeared behind Sasuke. In his momentary panic, he had forgotten about Naruto, and it may have very well cost the boy his life. This had been the only team thus far to show such promise, and it had been ruined already. Kakashi moved to knock out Sasuke and found that his hand had gone through the Uchiha. The scenery changed to show a battered and tired Naruto still leaning against the tree while the Uchiha had disappeared. A slight jingle of bells from behind him caused him to turn around. His first reaction upon seeing Sakura happily jingling 2 bells was to grab at his belt to see if they were really missing. Genjutsu, he whispered as it dawned on him. Since when? Sakura smiled. Since you replaced yourself with the log to avoid Naruto's blow. It made sense. He had made sure to spread logs throughout the training ground, yet this particular one he had replaced with had seemed too close to the area the fighting had taken place in. So I take this was your doing, Sakura-chan? He said, obviously pleased. Yup, Sakura replied, nodding happily. Genjutsu is mine, but the plan was entirely his. She said, pointing at the boy leaning against the tree. Sasuke? Inquired Kakashi. Sakura looked downward rather dejectedly before speaking. He said something about the both of us getting in his way and slowing him down. He thought he would be better off working alone. Kakashi thought about it. If indeed Sasuke had cooperated with his teammates, this exercise would have been over much sooner than now. So it appeared that there was still one of the 3 that had not learned the lesson. He would have to report Sasuke's behavior to the Sandame. To pass the Uchiha after he had declined to play as a team would be showing favoritism and would further boost the Uchiha's ego. And that, Kakashi nor the hidden village of the leaves could not have. Alright, with the retrieval of the 2 bells from me, this test is over. Meet me at the posts we were at earlier, I need to go dig up our pet clan heir. He said before he poofed away, leaving Naruto and Sakura alone. Well, we did it, said Naruto as Sakura walked over. Yeah, she replied, we wouldn't have if it had not been for you. Arigato, Naruto, she said, and for the first time she saw a genuine smile from the boy. It was nothing, Sakura-chan, he said as he took her hand and groggily got to his feet. I don't know, said Sakura as they walked off towards the clearing. Somehow I don't feel sad Sasuke-kun didn't cooperate with us. I mean, we did offer to help. Naruto could only nod at her statement. He was too exhausted to even think of making a witty comment about the Uchiha. Naruto stumbled as they neared the posts and fell into Sakura, causing both of them to topple to the ground. Naruto immediately tried to get up and off of the pink-haired girl and fell to his side again. Sakura knew that Naruto had used up the last of his energy walking this far and that he could no longer walk any further. She bent down and hoisted his arm around her shoulder before glancing at Naruto and smiling. You know, someone could claim that this was all an act you were faking so that you would get me to carry you to the posts. Naruto looked at Sakura with a face of faked mild panic. Shush, Sakura-chan, we don't want the whole world to know about my plan, he said. Sakura giggled at his antics and wondered how he managed to make light of every small situation that she would have felt depressed about. She knew she probably would have laughed had his voice not been shaky from so much exhaustion. They had barely reached the posts before Naruto slipped again, causing him to hit his head on the wooden post and fall unconscious. Sakura knew that Naruto had slipped deliberately, trying to relieve her of his load sooner than she would have liked to. The knockout, however, she believed had been part of his clumsiness with himself. Sakura pulled Naruto's head onto her lap and slowly untied his forehead protector. There was blood coming out of a possible cut on his forehead, and she wanted to at least stem the blood flow. However, she had been astonished as the cut healed by itself and vanished, leaving only a blood stain to show that there was even a cut there. The rustling of leaves alerted her to the entrance of Kakashi and Sasuke to the area. Is he dead? Asked the Uchiha with a smirk as he walked over and sat next to another post. Sakura glared at Sasuke, something that she had never imagined her being able to do towards him. No, she hissed, not wanting to say anything to the egotistical Uchiha. Alright, that's enough, said Kakashi as he stepped in between the two genin. Sasuke, against the post, said the Chunin as he laid a hand on the Uchiha's shoulder. Why me? He yelled. Why not one of them losers? Well, Sasuke-kun, Sakura managed to get one bell from me with Naruto's help. So she gets to eat. Naruto, well, you see he's pretty much out of it, so I can't tie him up or deny him the food, said Kakashi as he tied Sasuke's arms around the post behind him. It was easy to see the humiliation and anger in Sasuke's face as it happened. Alright Sakura, you know the rules. No feeding Sasuke till I come back from the Hokage. We will see who gets the remaining bell when I come back. Sakura spoke as soon as Kakashi left. You do know this whole test was about teamwork, right? She said as she unpacked one of the bento boxes Kakashi had left her. If you had cooperated with us when we came to you, maybe you wouldn't be in that position. Sasuke snorted. Why would I want to team up with you two weaklings? All you managed to get is one bell between the both of you. And look how he ended up. Sakura felt the anger rise up within her. True, Naruto had been worn out by the fight, yet he had fought already exhausted of his chakra, and to pull it off they had gotten both bells. But she wasn't going to tell Sasuke that, for if she did, then Kakashi's cover of having one of them go back to academy would be blown. Sakura sat in silence and ate her bento, not wanting to even glance at the arrogant Uchiha that seemed to anger her as easily as Naruto had once upon a time. She was halfway through when she realized that this lunch was the second chance at passing this test. She stopped eating and looked at the bento box. She already had a bell and wouldn't need as much chakra as she would have earlier to help Naruto and Sasuke. Yet, Sasuke would need the energy and chakra for what Kakashi has in store for them after the break. Besides, she had had a slight breakfast before she came and the other two hadn't. Sakura glanced once more at Sasuke before taking a deep breath and held out the bento box towards him. Here, you can have the rest, she said. I don't need food, said the Uchiha, turning his head away. Stop being so hard-headed. You will need the energy for the next test, she said as she stood up and walked closer to feed him. Sasuke had had enough. They thought they could mock him for his failure. He would show them what a failure they were. As soon as Sakura was close enough, he lashed out with his foot and kicked the bento box away, spilling its remains. Sakura was irate. Why did you do that? That was good food, she yelled. I am an Uchiha, the last remaining member of one of the most powerful clans in Konoha. We do not eat the leftovers from a commoner. A commoner. So that's what Sasuke thought of her, was it? Fine, she yelled back. Then this commoner is no longer going to do anything for you, before she stormed off towards the farthest post from Sasuke and to Naruto. There was a slight stirring from Naruto and Sakura's attention turned from the Uchiha to the blonde boy. He opened his eyes to see Sakura looking at him with worry and Sasuke tied to a pole. Naruto managed to groan and sit up properly before he spoke. Is this a dream? He said and heard Sakura giggle for the second time in the day. No, it's not, she replied as she handed him the remaining bento box. He looked at her with a mischievous smile. I guess it's too much to ask if you would feed me? The pink-haired girl smiled. Sorry, you are on your own on this one, she said. Naruto laughed and she realized that his genuine laugh was much different than his faked one. It seemed more joyous than his previous ones. Okay, I'll eat by myself then. Itadakimasu, he said before digging into the rice with gusto. It wasn't until he had swallowed the first bit of rice that he noticed that Sakura's bento box had been spilt. Aren't you eating, Sakura-chan? He asked. I've already eaten, Naruto. I had half before the oh-so-mighty Uchiha kicked it away for offering it to him, she said with a slight growl. Well, since you already tried offering it to him, want to help me finish this? I don't think I'll be able to finish this myself. Even though they both knew it was a lie, Naruto felt immediately better as Sakura picked up the pair of fallen chopsticks and joined him. Though unknown to the two genin, there was a flash and the slight snigger of someone who had just attained priceless blackmail material. The presence of this extra person did not go unknown to Hitaki Kakashi and the Sandaime that were currently hidden inside a tree nearby, though they decided to ignore it. I understand what you are saying, Kakashi. If we keep Sasuke on the team, It further boosts his ego about him being the last Uchiha and being fawned over by the entire village. And not to mention the consequences it might have on his teammates and mission should he decide to go solo. I understand that you want to fail them, said the Hokage. On the contrary, Hokage-sama, I feel the other two would do very well on a team, any team for that matter. They both have the maturity and sense to adapt to each other's styles, and I feel they could be very influential if passed. The Sandaime chuckled. You know, this is very weird coming from a Chunin who has never passed a single team before due to their failure to work as a team, he said, causing Kakashi to scratch the back of his head sheepishly. Then there is the problem of their third member. I am sure you are aware that there are no more graduates from the academy. The silver-haired Chunin thought for just a minute before responding. I was more thinking of Konoha's first two-man cell. The Sandaime's eyes widened. Though the thought is very interesting, Kakashi-kun, there is still the matter of the risks that they will be facing in the outside world. Not to mention their promotions. The Chunin exam is a three-man cell-based exam. I understand, Hokage-sama. That means I simply will have to prepare them so well that they can take on all odds for the next Chunin exam, which I believe is being held here. I'm sure you can do something to prevent them from eliminating teams with lesser numbers. Sarutobi sighed. It was obvious that Kakashi had him trapped. Fine, I'll allow it, but it better not come and stab me in the back, Kakashi, said the Sandaime, to which the Chunin nodded. Alright, send Sasuke to me when you are done. I'll go inform the council about your decision, though I'm pretty sure that they will try to make a team for him. Kakashi nodded, and Shunshined. I am not so sure if this is the correct way to use past tense on Shunshin. Skeptical smiley face back to his team. Naruto and Sakura had just finished their meal when Kakashi suddenly appeared behind Sasuke and untied him from the post. The Uchiha smirked and rubbed his sore arms. The Sandaime yell at you? He asked, the confidence in his voice evident. Kakashi just closed his eyes and sighed. No, there is no way you can walk back to the academy while tied to a rooted post, is there? The statement mixed with the resulting furious expression from the Uchiha caused the other two onlooking genin to burst into laughter, causing Sasuke to be infuriated even further. You can't do this to me. I am an Uchiha, one of the village's ninja elite. You need me. Kakashi nodded. True, very true. You are from one of the village's elite clans. This caused Sasuke to smile. They did need his skills and Sharingan after all. But doesn't mean we need you. Some of the villagers might consider you living royalty. But I do not want or need a soldier that does not take orders or someone who doesn't play as a team on my squad. Team? What team? Once you give me the strength and the power I need, I'll be better than any stinking team, yelled the infuriated Uchiha. If a team is nothing, then explain to me why two genin were able to take both the bells from me, a Chunin and a former Anbu captain. Kakashi let the statement hang as Sakura and Naruto hung their jaws in awe at Kakashi. This test was all about teamwork. Each part of it was designed to pit you against your teammate, to see if any of you would sacrifice their own interests for the good of the team and their mission. A ninja that does not care about the mission is trash. But a ninja who does not care about the village or his team is lower than trash. Remember that. There was a momentary silence as Sasuke recovered from Kakashi's verbal offense. He clenched his fists and gritted his teeth as he spoke. The Shinobi Council will hear of this offense. And you will come and beg me to let you teach me, he said before he vanished from sight. Though arrogant, Kakashi could not deny that the kid was a genius. The bento box was also a test, right? Asked Sakura, finally voicing the question. Yes, it was. It was his second chance to make up for what he hadn't seen earlier. If you hadn't offered it to him, I would have had no right to fail him. Naruto thought that it made sense. Anyone could be blamed for being blind once. Yet the one to refuse it a second time knowing what it was, would be refusing it for real. So, what happens to us now? He said, speaking his turn. I thought all genin squads were three-man cells? They are. But the Sandaime has given me permission to train Konoha's very first two-man cell, said the Chunin, smiling. What about the missions, Sensei? Asked Sakura. We'll manage. Naruto's cage bunshin should make up for the missing third person. And for the risks, well, I guess the both of you just have to get stronger faster than everyone else. Now if there are no more questions, you two may go. Sakura immediately shot up from her sitting position, her hand grabbing Naruto's shirt and proceeding to drag him on the ground. Sakura-chan, he moaned. No buts Naruto. You are suffering from chakra exhaustion. You need to go see a doctor, said the girl as she continued to drag him towards Konoha. Finally it clicked with Kakashi. So that's why he didn't use a single clone or jutsu during the entire test. He was out of chakra. Impressive Naruto-kun. I would like to see what you would be capable of doing with full chakra capacity. The sun had barely risen above the horizon when Naruto woke up from his sleep. He glanced at his watch and figured that it must have broken or something. It had never failed to sound off before. He sat up on his bed and rubbed his eyes. He had a lot planned for the day, and he needed to get started now if he wanted to finish most of it in time for his training with Team 7. He had been to the Hokage straight after his awkward visit to the hospital along with Sakura for some tips on taijutsu training, and he wanted to get started on it as soon as possible. Naruto groaned as he remembered the hospital trip. Sakura had made him walk through the streets, intent on not letting him use any amount of chakra, and it had been obvious that she had seen the glares and the curses thrown at him. Worse, she had also seen both the doctors and nurses ignore him, claiming that they had much more urgent issues to look at than some minor case of chakra exhaustion. In the end, she had taken him to her mother, one of the only remaining medic nins in the whole of Konoha. However, the time after the hospital visit had allowed him to reflect on the survival exam and note that his taijutsu was below par. Par being Sasuke's taijutsu level. He knew he needed to improve on it, but he also knew that the academy style of taijutsu did not suit him at all. The only option left for him was to create his own taijutsu style. And that was why he had visited the Hokage later that night. And though he didn't get any on developing his own style, he did get some tips on how to improve his speed and strength. The old man, Kami bless his soul, had also given him a scroll that taught him two types of seals. A weight seal and a storage seal. The effects and how to use them had been written on the scroll along with the instructions. Though it seemed that Naruto needed to improve his calligraphy before he could use either seal. And as such, practicing calligraphy was the first thing on his agenda for the day. Naruto decided he'd make 10 clones to help him. 4 to practice calligraphy along with him and the remaining 6 to work on his chakra control. What little of the tree-walking exercise he had mastered had helped him with the clones he produced, and he could now feel the difference in chakra drainage. Thus he decided it would be best if he mastered every aspect of it before attempting anything else and set his clones about it. He also set the clock right in front of him so that he'd be able to see the time pass by. The last thing he wanted to be was late for team training. Sakura arrived at the bridge sharp at 12 p.m. and was surprised to see both Naruto and Kakashi already there. Well, this is a surprise, she said as she walked up to them. Naruto nodded. He was here earlier than I was. So I'm in doubt as to whether it's really him. This was Kakashi's cue to wave his hands in front of him. No, it's me. I just thought since you are now a two-man cell, that you will need all the time you can get with me, said the Chunin, giving them his one-eyed smile. It was understood by both genin that they both needed to be stronger in order to make up for their missing teammate. Almost all shinobi teams were made up of either 3 members or more. That included the Chunin and Junin teams from the other shinobi nations as well. And if Team 7 were to meet any of these teams, they would be greatly outnumbered, and there was where the extra training would come in. So what's our plan for today? Asked Sakura, and in turn got an amused smile from Kakashi. Looks like the fangirl is ready to train without the object of her affection around anymore, said the silver-haired Chunin with a slight chuckle. Sakura scoffed. Ex-fangirl, she stated. The crush was pretty much, well, crushed when his attitude fell lower than mine, she said, giving them a smile of her own at the pun. Besides, I feel it is time for a little change in the way I live my life. Kakashi nodded. Okay, he said. I was thinking it would be best if we set up a daily schedule for the both of you before we moved on to anything else like missions. It is pretty apparent that you two need training more than the time you two spend with me. How much time can both of you devote to training? He asked, gesturing to Sakura. I can devote my whole day. I would like to be home at night so I can spend some time with mom and also some time to myself, she said. Naruto? Asked Kakashi once she had finished. It's not like I have anyone waiting for me at my apartment or friends to hang out with, said the boy, and Sakura felt an immediate pang of sadness at his statement. She knew how hard it was for her to spend nights without her mother, whenever there was a crisis at the hospital. It was only due to Ino and her mother that Sakura had survived the nights. She couldn't even imagine what it was like to spend most of her time alone. It was one of the reasons she had tried so hard to care for Sasuke, to not let him feel that pain, and she realized now, that no one had tried to lessen it even a little for Naruto. Said Kakashi as he pondered on the information they had given him. Okay, how about this? How about you two join up sometime in the morning? You two can decide the time amongst yourselves. You can train yourselves on whatever you like. And then at sharp 12 o'clock I will join you for our missions. We can have lunch together and continue our set amount of daily missions until nightfall. If you complete them all with spare time, I will teach you both something of your own choice. The two genin mulled Kakashi's plan over for a minute. On one hand, it meant that they both had to train with each other with no sort of guidance or help for half a day before he would join them with a scroll full of mission. Yet, it would also mean that if they did manage to complete the missions on time that they could get any sort of help or information from the Chunin. Sakura was the first to respond. Okay, fine with me, and Naruto just nodded. Kakashi smiled. Alright, you two can decide the time to meet later. For now, we have some missions to do. With that, Team 7 started the long and boring missions classified as the low D-ranked missions. Though the two managed to complete the missions a few minutes before sunset, the both of them were too exhausted and sore to do any training. After all, it had been their first day of doing missions. Well, you two did great for Rookie Genin. And you even managed to finish before sunset. Now I am a man who does not like to go back on his word, and since you two do not look like you can train any further, I will give you both some advice. This perked up both of the panting Genin's attentions. Sakura, you have amazing chakra control, but your chakra capacity is below average for even a Genin. Exhaust your chakra before you go to bed every night and you will see it grow gradually. Naruto, you have loads of chakra even for a Chunin, yet your control is so bad that your skill with chakra is mere academy level. Do not get me wrong, it's improved since yesterday, but you still need to fine-tune it. Maybe it wouldn't be so bad to ask someone for help on an easier way to learn to control it. Kakashi vanished before either of the two could ask further more about his advice. What is up with him? Groaned Sakura as she rolled her eyes at Kakashi's behavior. Why did we have to get stuck with him? Naruto shrugged. Maybe he just wants us to know that we will not grow strong only on what he teaches us and that we need to improve ourselves. All I know is that no one else would have given us this chance to be a two-man cell. Sakura nodded and sighed. Alright, I guess you are right. Well, I'm exhausted, so I'm going to go home and sleep. See you tomorrow, Naruto, said Sakura as she stumbled towards her home, her legs too heavy to lift on her own. It was only when Naruto reached his apartment that he realized that they hadn't set a time to meet the next day. He would wake up early tomorrow and go find her. He just had no strength to move tonight. Needless to say, the young Jinchuriki was asleep as soon as he hit the bed. The next morning began abruptly for Naruto to the sound of someone knocking on his front door. He glanced at his clock and silently cursed whoever that had woken him up at 4 in the morning before pulling his pants on and walking to the door. The dreary-eyed boy opened the door to find both Sakura and Sayaki standing at his doorstep. Good morning, Naruto-kun, greeted the elder Haruno cheerfully. Did we wake you up? She asked. Naruto recovered fast, grinning before he scratched the back of his head. Well, yeah, kind of. But since you are here, why don't you come in? He asked, opening the door and gesturing them in. It isn't much compared to what you two are used to at your house, but I tried to make it as homely as I could with my allowance. Sakura glanced up as she entered and saw the blonde boy slip a black t-shirt on. It was a bit weird to see him in any other color than orange, but Sakura couldn't help but think that he looked good in black. It made him seem more mature. Naruto, she called, getting his attention. How come you don't wear that to missions? It is less visible in the dark, you know. Well, to be honest, the jumpsuit was something given to me by one of the first people to accept me. Originally when I was a baby, so that he could differentiate me in the orphanage. I just stuck with the style ever since. He paused to look at Sakura before continuing. Besides, you can't talk. You wear that bright red dress every day. Maybe you should change it too. Sayaki laughed at his comeback, though Sakura went into deep thought. She had started wearing that dress sometime in her second year in the academy. A little after her crush on Sasuke started to develop. It was after that rumor that Sasuke liked girly girls more that she had worn it and started wearing her hair long. Maybe Naruto was right. Maybe it was time she changed it. Shall we? Asked Naruto. After all, Kakashi-sensei did say we would need all the training we could get. Sakura nodded and followed Naruto outside. I was thinking of a few laps around Konoha. You know, to increase our stamina. Since we kind of do get exhausted very easily. He said, and Sayaki nodded. That's good thinking, Naruto-kun. I know how early you two finished up yesterday, and Sakura, being someone obsessed with her femininity, albeit during her fangirl phase, hasn't quite developed the muscles a ninja requires. Continued Sayaki. There was no way Sakura could argue with that. She had indeed neglected her training, thinking that it would only be a hindrance to her chances of having Sasuke. And it was only now she realized what a mistake that had been. She wouldn't dare to think how she would turn out if she hadn't stopped fawning after the Uchiha. Since neither Sakura nor Naruto were taking the initiative, Sayaki gave them a slight nudge. So how about you two go run and I'll meet you on training ground 4 in, say, half an hour. The two genin nodded before disappearing from view as fast as they could. Half an hour later, the two genin literally stumbled into the training grounds, both exhausted and aching to find Sayaki there already with a couple of packed bento boxes, waiting for them. She called out as soon as she saw them. I brought you guys some breakfast, said Sayaki. Why don't you have them while you rest? The pair quickly ate their breakfast, intent on not wasting too much time that could be used to strengthen themselves, before moving on to chakra control exercises, Naruto using some clones to speed up his learning curve. It was Sakura's first time seeing the Kage Bunshin used by the blonde boy, as he preferred to do the missions just by himself. She didn't know why, but he had said something about improving himself physically and she had let it go. My, said Sayaki as she stepped up to her daughter. The Kage Bunshin. It's been a while since I saw this particular rank jutsu. A rank? Echoed Sakura. Yes, replied Sayaki. It is a clone jutsu that produces solid clones that are as strong as the user himself. They have the same abilities as the user, both physically and jutsu-wise. Guess Naruto isn't as weak as he looks. Sakura could not help but stare in awe at Naruto's skill in the Kage Bunshin. She could only imagine the amount of chakra he needed to use to form one, yet the 10 that he was currently using. After all, it was ninja basics that the more powerful a jutsu, the larger amount of chakra or control it takes. Go Sakura-chan, urged Sayaki. You may not have his chakra, but it does not make you any less of a ninja. I'm sure he will be the first to say that. Sakura nodded and ran off. True, she might not know the jutsu or have his huge chakra capacity. Yet it did not mean she was any more incapable of doing the jutsus and the exercises he could. Plus it did help that she had more control over her small amount of chakra, which she decided really needed to grow. Naruto was halfway up the tree when the bark beneath his left foot crumbled and he fell off. He noticed that it was only then that Sakura had started even attempting the exercise. To his wonder and dismay, she managed to climb to the top of the tree on her first try, though she looked pretty drained from the effort. He made a mental note to ask her later. After an hour of tree climbing, Sakura stopped and called Naruto over. What's wrong, Sakura-chan? He asked as he jogged over to the breathless girl. I'm out of chakra, she managed to say in between pants. Naruto nodded. He remembered Kakashi saying that she had smaller chakra reserves and that she should grow them. Okay, said the boy. How about you rest for a while and then we can have a taijutsu spar. To see where our weaknesses lie. Sure, Sakura replied. Anyo, Sakura-chan, how do you do the tree climbing exercise so easily? Said the blonde boy. It seemed to Sakura as if Naruto had trouble asking her. She knew it was not because he looked down on her as a ninja. Being the dead last for their entire time in the academy, he knew that most were better than him at something. He seemed almost as if he was afraid of her reaction. The trip to the hospital flashed back to her mind. The glares and curses she was sure were thrown in his direction. So intense, so full of hatred that she feared they might have attacked him had she not been with him. Inside the hospital had been no different. Those glares were still there, yet here, they also denied him the treatment. All with a simple, I have more urgent matters to attend to. It was as if they did not care what happened to him. Sakura-chan? Came Naruto's voice, bringing her back to the present. I can go ask someone else if you have trouble explaining, he said. The sadness was evident in his voice. No, Naruto, she said quickly. The trick of the exercise is to find out the exact amount of chakra necessary to stick to the tree and to keep that amount gathered at the sole of your foot rather than trying to gather the amount for each step. There was a loud thwack as Naruto slapped his head. No wonder he had found it so difficult to stick to the tree. He had always gathered the chakra and released it after his step had been taken instead of holding the chakra at his feet. "Thanks, Sakura-chan," he yelled in her ear as he ran off, dispelling his current batch of clones and forming another. 10 minutes later, Naruto had gotten the hang of the tree climbing and was now facing off solely against Sakura in a one-on-one taijutsu-only spar. Slow and deliberate, both genin took time in trying to figure out the opponent's weakness and tried using it against them, both of them landing an equal amount of hits. Naruto's fully offensive taijutsu had a lot of flaws in it, leaving him open to preemptive attacks and counterattacks. Sakura's defensive taijutsu had its own flaws as well, her lack of speed and strength to withstand Naruto's brute force allowing him to land as many blows as her counters allowed her to. They continued sparring until about 11 in the morning when Sayaki decided it was best that they rest the next hour and ready themselves for the missions. Naruto, being as generous as he was, offered Sakura the chance to learn the weight and storage seals along with him, and the girl took the chance without any hesitation. It was during this practice of calligraphy that Sakura asked Naruto about the Kage Bunshin. "Naruto?" she asked, and he looked at her. "Where did you learn the Kage Bunshin? I mean, it's an awesome technique, but it's not taught anywhere in the academy or Konoha." Naruto looked back at his paper as the events of that night flashed back through his brain. Would it be okay to tell Sakura about what had happened? About how he had graduated? Sakura noticed him furrow his eyebrows as he tried to decide on a path of action and figured that it was a sensitive topic for him. "You don't have to tell me if you don't want to, Naruto-kun." Naruto looked up at her and smiled. "Thanks, Sakura-chan. It's just hard for me to tell you about it." Sakura smiled. "Do you think I can learn it?" she asked. Naruto thought for a minute before she replied. "Of course you can, but I can't teach it to you. It has a lot of risks. For example, the chakra required may be more than you have for more than one clone. And the clones do die rather easily." Sakura nodded. It made sense, even a powerful jutsu had to have a weakness. "How come you don't use more than 10 clones at a time? You have enough chakra to create more?" she asked. "Well, yes, I can create more clones at a time. But each time they dispel, all their experiences and memories are transferred to me. And 10 lives at once make me a little groggy. I'm not sure I can take more than that without getting used to it more." He replied, not even bothering to look up from his writing. "Memories?" she asked. "Yeah, everything they see, hear and feel are transferred to me. Which means I immediately know what they've seen, felt or heard, and if they died, the pain of their death as well. Also, it means that whatever jutsu they practice, I become more familiar with as well. That's why I use them for the exercises." "How come you don't use them in missions then?" she asked, now very curious. "Well, the theory only applies to genjutsu and ninjutsu, not taijutsu, as only the memories are passed to me. So basically my muscles do not develop just because my clones use them. I'm not really sure about kenjutsu. I will have to ask someone like Kakashi." "Yes," came a voice as both genin looked upwards to see Kakashi perched on the branch. "The technique can be applied to kenjutsu as well, if you mean the experience in handling a katana. And yes, Sakura can learn the Kage Bunshin, but she has to promise to use only 1 clone per day and for training only." Sakura's interest peaked at the mention of her learning the Kage Bunshin. "Why only once a day and only for training?" asked Naruto. "Well, with her current reserves, it would drain her too much to be effective in battle. Yet in training, it would help her with her jutsus and chakra control, while the drain will increase the rate of the growth of her chakra reserves," replied Kakashi. "The 1 clone per day rule only applies until her reserves are large enough for her to be able to make 2 and still stay standing on her feet. You do know that the clones dispel if the user is out of chakra or unconscious, right?" Naruto nodded. He had experienced that the first night. His chakra exhaustion had dispelled the clones, the information overload finally knocking him out. "Well, if you two are done resting, shall we get on with our missions?" asked Kakashi as he jumped down to the ground. The 2 genin stood up and left after their sensei. The system of training continued for the next 2 weeks, both of them doing laps early in the morning, followed by chakra control exercises which sometimes went along with sparring, and then doing the missions in the afternoon. Both genin of Team 7 had improved a lot compared to their starting positions, both of them managing to learn the weight and storage seals as well as moving on to water, walking to the limit where they could now spar on water. Their taijutsu skills had also improved as well as their marksmanship with the ninja tools such as shuriken and kunai. Naruto's chakra control had improved to the point that he wasted very little chakra while performing the Kage Bunshin. Sakura meanwhile had increased her chakra capacity so that now she could form 2 Kage Bunshin and still be effective in battle, though her control had slipped a little. Kakashi had been overjoyed with their progress and as promised had taught them what they had wanted to know. Surprisingly for him, the only thing they had asked him for was taijutsu lessons and tips. He had asked them why and they had responded that it was the only thing that they needed to improve as soon as possible and that it was the only thing that they could not learn from a scroll or a book in the ninja library. Kakashi had gone further as to ask why they hadn't asked for ninjutsu or genjutsu lessons. Sakura had been the one to respond to this particular question, stating that neither of them knew their chakra affinities, thus did not know what type of ninjutsu to ask for. The 2 genin had decided to take their nights off, Naruto spending his time with more seals that the Sandaime had given him on request and Sakura studying the human body. Sakura had always wanted to be a doctor and had decided that she would become a medic nin like her mother. And it would also mean that she would have a career to fall back on if she encountered a career-ending injury. Exactly 2 weeks after their training had started, both Naruto and Sakura stood near the bridge waiting for Kakashi. "He's late," said Sakura. "It's not like him to be late for our meetings." Indeed, Kakashi had stopped his habit of being late, at least to things where his 2-man cell was concerned. "I bet it's the old man," he said as he finished drawing a seal on the palm of a black glove that he had bought from a store earlier that morning. Now that his control was better, he could manage a small genjutsu that disguised him and allowed him to buy things from shops and stores he wasn't allowed into earlier. "I don't really see anyone else being able to detain him for so long." True, over the past 2 weeks, the 2 genin had gotten to know their sensei a bit more. Enough that Kakashi had told them about his past with Obito and Rin and the Yondaime as well as his time as an Anbu captain, though he hadn't told them everything. They didn't expect him to either. "Alright, it's done," he exclaimed as he put the glove on. Sakura looked at his questioningly and Naruto held out his palm at her. "See that?" he said as she pointed to the palm of the glove and the seal he had painted there. "That's a special storage seal for kunai," he said grinning. "I have another special seal for shuriken on the palm of this hand. So now, I don't have to reach anywhere to get a weapon." It finally made sense why he was so fervent about being a better shuriken thrower with his left arm than his right. He was practicing so that he could always hit his target by surprise. "Naruto," said Sakura, "what if the kunai comes out with the pointed end towards you?" she asked. It wasn't really a problem with the shuriken as each side of the star was sharp enough, but the kunai was like a knife. A blade on one end and a handle on the other. Naruto stuck his hand closer to her face. "See the diagram of a kunai?" Sakura looked closely at the seal and noticed a diagram of a kunai in the middle, its point faced towards the left, away from the body when drawn. She responded. "Well, that's the direction it will unseal in, no matter how I seal it in," he said with a confident grin, proud of his own creation. Sakura was impressed. Naruto had thought about it all before he had gone and drawn the seal on the glove. Not what she would have expected from the dobi a few weeks ago. She would have to ask him to make some for her later on. Even though she knew how to create a storage seal, she still had no clue how to draw these special ones. It was just too complicated for her. The weight seal and storage seal had been simple as it didn't require much knowledge of sealing to be able to learn them and use them. The weight seal only needed to be drawn for it to be active. The user having to push chakra into it to make it heavier and withdrawing chakra to make it lighter. Likewise, the storage seal only needed for the user to push the item with a little bit of chakra to seal it, and a little bit of chakra to unseal it. The only reason she had had to learn both of these were because the seals would only allow the creator to use it. The reasons for it being created that way were understandable. A poof of smoke interrupted Sakura's thoughts as Kakashi appeared looking rather rushed. "We have a slight change of plans today," said the Chunin. "Sandaime has assigned an urgent mission of high priority to us. I want the both of you to pack everything for a few days and meet me at the gate in an hour." Both Sakura and Naruto went racing home, wondering what had their sensei so rushed. Exactly an hour after they had split up to go and pack, the two genin of Team 7 met their sensei in front of the main Konoha gate, fully packed. "Got everything?" asked Kakashi as he eyed the two young ninja. Naruto nodded and patted the two scrolls that had taken the place of his ninja pouches, while Sakura had one going across her back along her waistline. "Kids," muttered Kakashi, sealing everything into scrolls. The two genin smiled. They both knew that they were the only genin of their batch to seal their equipment into scrolls or pouches. Kakashi the only Chunin to use the method. Both Naruto and Sakura knew the Yondaime was Konoha's second seal master, and Kakashi, being his prized pupil, was expected to know some sealing techniques himself. "So what's the mission, Kakashi-sensei?" asked Naruto, eager to get on the way. "The Hokage has received a request from a friendly city near our border with Iwa for a team to help with their current civil war. Normally the Hokage would send a Chunin team, but the earliest he can send one is at least a week later. Meanwhile, the current government is sending a scroll to the village of Iwagakure for help to quell this rebellion. And we cannot let that scroll reach the border and into the land of Earth. The Hokage wants us to intercept this messenger and make sure it does not cross the border," said Kakashi. "But won't this mission be risky, sensei? Surely Iwagakure will send their ninja to retrieve this scroll," said Sakura. "Iwa and Konoha relations are on a very tight rope, and they are still recovering from the last shinobi war. Iwa dare not step across that border without expecting us to declare all-out war with them. And with them being the trespassers, they cannot hope to win over the other hidden villages either. The Hokage does not expect much ninja activity above the average Chunin missing nin in that particular area," said Kakashi. "So, basically we are just going there to prevent the scroll from getting across the border?" asked Naruto. "Well, yes, though the Hokage wants us to stay with the rebels until the Chunin squad comes to relieve us," said Kakashi. "It's good really, it means you can gain experience as well as train with me for a longer time when we don't have any action." Naruto nodded and Sakura stood silent. "We will get further information on what to do when we reach the city," continued Kakashi. "Shall we?" he asked before he jumped into the trees, the two genin keeping pace with him easily. It took Team 7 most of the entire day to arrive at the designated meeting spot with one of their employers. Yet the sight that greeted them was less welcoming than they expected. There was a slight skirmish going on between a group of samurai and what seemed to be a small battalion of soldiers. Kakashi called a halt to the two genin as he surveyed the fight taking place. "Why are we stopping? We should go and help them," asked Naruto, as he tried to control himself from jumping into the fray. "Naruto," scolded Sakura, "be patient. Besides, how do we even know who is who?" Naruto calmed down for a while as he looked at the ongoing battle. Sakura was right. He did not know who he should help and who he should kill. Kakashi spoke then and both genin listened. "The ones with the red flags are our employers. Anyone with a different color is to be killed on sight." "Killed?" asked Sakura, shocked. Kakashi looked at her and nodded. "Yes. We can't have the Suzaku government finding out about our presence in the city. It would ruin our plans for intercepting that scroll. A failure in our mission could mean our enemies in Iwa gaining more power." Sakura tried to resist the growing knot in her stomach, trying to convince herself that it wouldn't be hard. After all, it needed to be done for her career and for the good of the village. "All right," said Kakashi, and the feeling of dread returned to Sakura. "I want this done, fast and quick, let no one escape." Sakura steeled herself. It needed to be done, if they were going to stop another shinobi world war. The three ninja vanished from their spots on the tree. Down in the clearing below, the Kanika rebels were trying their hardest to repel the greater number of Suzaku soldiers with little success. Out of the 10 that had originally come, there were now 5, and their hopes of surviving were looking slimmer and slimmer. Masato Kanika, youngest child of their leader Tomoshiro Kanika, ducked under a naginata before he impaled the onrushing soldier with his samurai katana. He pulled the blade out, flicking the blood off of it with a quick whip of his wrist as he surveyed the battle. He wouldn't know just how many soldiers the Suzaku had sent until he had made a body count, but they had managed to take down 5 of the 10 samurai in Kanika's small force during the surprise attack. The other 5, including himself, were making a fight out of it, making sure that the warband did not make it away with low casualties. Masato cursed Konoha. If their aid had arrived on time an hour earlier, they would have been better prepared for this onslaught. Maybe they wouldn't even have suffered any casualties. And now, they were going to die waiting for help that did not arrive. Masato saw one of his samurai fall, knocked over by the hurtling form of a Suzaku soldier trying to shove a short sword into his armor. There was no way he was going to get to him soon enough to save him. He watched in horror as the soldier thrust the sword into the samurai with a triumphant cry, only for the samurai to be replaced by a log. A log? Thought Masato. What in the world is happening? His thoughts were answered as the silver-haired form of Kakashi appeared in front of the shocked Suzaku soldier and slashed a kunai across his throat, the blood spraying into empty space as the Chunin vanished again. Konoha had finally come. Their ninja had finally arrived at the designated spot, and look at their efficiency. With that speed, Masato knew that the Suzaku soldier had not seen the ninja until he had met the blade of the kunai. Another Suzaku soldier fell, clutching his throat, as a red figure appeared in front of him. Though this one seemed slightly slower and smaller than the silver-haired man had been. A sudden yell from nearby broke Masato out of his trance, and he managed to turn his head around to see a blade come slashing down at him. It was over. He knew it. He knew that he did not have the speed to lift up his blade in time to block the incoming slash. Before he knew it, a couple of kunai impacted with his assailant's face, spurting blood into the air. The orange army that followed the kunai had passed him before the body even hit the ground. Masato watched in amazement, as the orange army soundly took on the whole remainder of the Suzaku detachment, with the occasional sighting of the silver-haired man and what seemed to Masato like a girl in a red dress. Soon, the skirmish was over. The Kanika had suffered 5 deaths opposed to the Suzaku's 30 lost men. A proper victory, thanks to the surprise and effectiveness of the Konoha nen. For now, Masato needed to go talk to the silver-haired man. He had been expecting a team of 5 grown-up men, yet had been found by a man and 2 children. There had to be an explanation. So you are telling me that the soonest you can send your Chunin team is in a week, and that you 3 are all I have to work with for the whole of this week? Exclaimed Masato as if he had been cheated. Kakashi's sweat dropped. He had already explained it 4 times, and this would be the 5th with this particular man. He hoped that the leader of the rebellion would be much smarter than his son. Yes, Kanika-sama, we apologize, but had we waited for the Chunin team to assemble, then we would be allowing the Suzaku to send a messenger to Iwa. And that we cannot have. No, we cannot, exclaimed Masato. Can you not see that that is the exact problem? How do you think a Chunin and 2 mere genin can capture or kill a messenger? He asked, flabbergasted. This Chunin and 2 mere genin took on a whole detachment that you 10 samurai had trouble with. Stated Kakashi impatiently. What makes you think that this messenger will be any luckier? He is just 1 man. Masato had to concede on this point. If it had not been for their intervention, they would not have survived that day. And the news of Masato's death would be circulated by the Suzaku, demoralizing the rebel forces. Mainly because, the messenger will most likely be a ninja of Chunin to Chunin skill. There was no way that the Suzaku would let something that important go without a safety plan. And a backup safety plan as well. Kakashi looked Masato in the eye. If my students cannot handle him, then I will. Rest assured that we will get your messenger if only you would trust in our abilities and take us to gather some rest. Masato forced his mouth shut, driving all thoughts of a retort from his mind. He did owe them, at least enough to let them into his network and introduce him to the king, who would then decide the fate of the mission. He nodded. Fine, we move as soon as our men are done wrapping themselves up. He rarely let Kakashi look at him, so Kakashi had decided that he would not play at him, or play into him. As soon as the man was gone, the Kakashi Kage Bunshin vanished out of existence. The real Kakashi, meanwhile, was sitting next to an unconscious blonde boy who had gone through the mistake of using too many Kage Bunshin just to kill. Sakura also sat by Kakashi's side, waiting for Naruto to get up. She had felt the effect of having a couple of clones and them dying in very simple ways, and that was a pretty nasty experience. She had also taken her first kill today, much like him, yet she would have no idea what it was like to have the memories of the number of first kill each of the clones had taken. And it had knocked him out like a light. But she didn't know how it felt for her. Sakura. Kakashi spoke. Are you okay? Sakura dumbly nodded. Want to talk about it? Kakashi asked. Sakura fumbled for words. There was no way she was going to be able to say it out loud. She had been aiming for his chest. A slash deep enough to take him out of the fight but not kill him. So that she could feel better by claiming it had not been her that had taken the kill. Yet, the man had gone down on one knee at the last second. One of Naruto's stray kunai had hit him right behind his knee and it had buckled. He had gone down on one knee. Low enough that her slash had opened him up from left shoulder and across his neck, the blood spurting all over. She had been lucky to have the speed to avoid the spray. She had frozen in that moment. Her world had stopped, her brain constantly replaying the scene of her kunai entering and exiting. His skin parting way and his flesh opening up. The blood erupting from the long gash left in the now lifeless body. It had sickened her to her core. She had been lucky that Naruto's small clone army had charged in, distracting the enemy until she could recover enough to join them. And she had joined them in cutting down the remnant. Even though she did not make any further kills, she had played a vital part in bringing them down, to allow the samurai to finish them off. It's just that, it's hard to forget, to move on. She said after a while. Kakashi nodded. It does stay with you forever. I still remember each and every bit of my first kill, said the Chunin, but it is something you have to do in our career, to stay alive. Sakura knew that. She knew of the dangers of the career once they had taken the test. She knew that she currently did not have the strength to take on a Chunin. She had watched the #1 rookie of her batch try and fail. Yet she also knew that strength without the intent behind it was also unacceptable. The very same Chunin had fallen into a trap set by the lowest-ranking genin at that time. She knew that if he had been going for the kill, showing no mercy at all, then he would not have fallen for it. And she would be the same. She had to improve, and always have the intent if she wanted to be successful in her ninja career. Naruto groaned and struggled to sit up, clutching at his head as he was rising. "Naruto!" exclaimed Sakura as she helped her teammate sit up. "Are you okay?" My head hurts," said Naruto. "Yeah, you fainted," said Sakura. "All the first kills must have overloaded your brain. How do you feel?" "I'm okay. It's just chakra exhaustion," said the blonde boy. "Chakra exhaustion?" repeated Sakura. "But I'm okay. Why are you exhausted?" Naruto rolled up his arm and showed them a small seal on his shoulder, normally where the Anbu tattoo would have been. "What is that?" asked Sakura. "A chakra siphoning seal," said Naruto. "It's hard for me to use up all my chakras since the new training regiment began, since I only used 10 or so Kage Bunshin at a time. So I came up with this one. It would drain exactly 10% of the chakra that I use as long as it's on me. I kind of forgot to take it off as I left the village." "So it's been draining you all the time since we left?" asked Sakura, and the blonde boy nodded. Kakashi was once again impressed. He had yet again found another way to further himself than he already was. And that seal would also come in handy in battle, someday. "What about those people you killed? Don't you feel bad over them?" asked Sakura in disbelief. Naruto lowered his head. "I do. No one should die, much less be killed by someone else. But that is the way of life. And it is not the first time I have killed," said the boy, the last sentence mumbled so softly that Kakashi wouldn't have known what he had said unless he had read the boy's lips. "What?" gasped Sakura, taken aback a little. Naruto had killed someone before his first mission outside of Konoha? Even though she was surprised about this piece of information, what Naruto did next surprised her even more. He stood up groggily on his 2 legs and walked off. "Naruto!" She called after him, but it appeared that he hadn't heard her. Sakura would have gone after him had she not been held by a hand on her shoulder. "Let him be, Sakura," came Kakashi's voice. "He's not proud of that day. He feels he was only graduated on his prowess to kill." Sakura made to start after him, but Kakashi held her again. "Let him be, Sakura. He will tell you when he is ready. Come, Kanika-sama wants to leave for his base as soon as possible, in case more parties are sent to search for the one we killed. Naruto has the sense to not wander too far." Sakura nodded and followed Kakashi. Naruto meanwhile had walked off into the trees. Far enough to be separated from the group, yet not too far as not to notice that they were packing for departure. He mentally slapped himself over and over a few times. How could he have let that little piece of information about him slip? It was something he had vowed none of his batch would ever know. To be graduated just for killing a criminal that was wanted. And the kill had been accidental as well. He had in no way meant to kill Mizuki. He had respected him once, and even though Mizuki had betrayed him and Konoha, a mere academy student had no right to kill him. Somehow, a blow from a clone had caused Mizuki to hit a rock in an awkward way and he had died. Naruto didn't know whether it had been the rock that had killed him or whether it was the blow. All he had known was that the medics that came had pronounced him dead. And he had been given the headband soon after. True enough, the Hokage himself had said that the promotion was for showing extraordinary skill in mastering an A-ranked jutsu, but Naruto could not believe it. He could not help think that it was only for his kill of a nin, much less a Chunin, that was the real reason for his promotion. After Mizuki's death, Naruto had spent hours looking at his hands, imagining them blood-stained. He had thought he would never be able to kill again, but the sight of the soldiers overwhelming the Kanika samurai had pushed him into action. And after that, the killing came easily. Too easily, he thought. He would have pondered on the thought further, had not been there a call from Kakashi. They were finally on their way to meet the head of the Kanika. It took the group approximately 2 hours to get to the rebel base located in an old abandoned fort in the hills. By Misato's explanation, this was once a training ground for the Kanika family samurai, which were the roots of the samurai that the group had met. They had spoken little, save for the explanation of where they were going. Misato would not tell them the exact location, he said it would slow down their pace. They would be taken there anyways and they would know the location. 2 hours, thought Sakura. 2 full hours, and they had been riding their horses at full gallop, their pace only slowed by the fact that the samurai could not use chakra. As they neared, Misato slowed down the pace of the group. He explained the reason as he pulled his horse to a halt. There is our base, he said, pointing to the old fort up ahead. It wasn't much from afar. Looked like about 3 stories high, with steep walls and parapets, made for a handful of guards and no real army. It's not much as you can see. If they can find us, we'd be pretty hard put to stave off an entire siege, he said as he looked at it from his vantage point. What do we do if they find us? Asked Kakashi. How do we defend it? Misato grinned. Just because they find it does not mean they can get to it. What you see before you is not normal sand. Not normal sand? Then what kind of sand could it be? Misato saw the confused look in the genin and explained. What lies before you until those trees up ahead is all quicksand, except for one narrow pathway, that will only allow 5 horses to travel on it abroad. Quicksand, like a hidden moat, and the weak-looking fort would urge the enemy into charging it full frontal, only for them to start sinking in the quicksand. So even though it looked poorly defended, it had traps laying in wait, and Sakura was sure there were more they weren't being told about. Well, if the 3 of you would follow me, I'll guide you through this trap, said Misato as he dismounted before leading his horse by its reins, his samurai and the Konoha team following, tracing his footsteps. Kakashi noted that the path Misato took was zigzagged with abrupt turns. He had memorized the number of steps before each turn so that he would not fall into it again. It would mean that the enemy would not find it easy even if they had found the beginning of the solid pathway, and they would learn that it was not straight the hard way. Misato noticed the silver-haired Junin observing each step Misato took and smiled. Yes, the enemy will find it hard to cross this, for their running steps will be larger than walking steps. And many will fall in trying to figure the zigzags. That means they will have to move slowly, making it easier for our samurai bows. Yes, Kakashi decided as they stepped into the trees, and what must have been solid ground. The Suzaku would suffer heavy losses trying to take this fort. The inside of the fort was not at all what Naruto and Sakura had anticipated. They had both imagined it as in Konoha, bustling with civilians and rarely any samurai activity. Yet, this fort was all about the samurai. Instead of the normal gates that would open inwards, as in Konoha, the Kanika fort had a gate that was raised and lowered. Naruto found that the lower edges of this gate ended in a large number of sharpened spikes. None other than to impale the attackers that managed to get through. Kanika-sama, how quickly can you close the gates? He asked as they entered. Kanika smiled and waited till everyone was in before giving out a bellowing command. One of the guards, a peasant soldier, by his dressing, let go of a rope and the gate rocketed down, slamming into the ground. All activity around the entering group ceased at the large boom that was heard, some of the younger and less experienced soldiers reaching for their swords. Sakura meanwhile was amazed at the number of people that had gathered at such a small fort. It wasn't until she had entered that she realized that it only looked small, but was also built into the side of the nearby mountain. Sakura frowned. They had survived only because they had not come across any conquering shinobi army. Any shinobi with an affinity for the earth element could easily breach these walls by tunneling through the mountain. But still, the number of people stunned her. In front of her eyes, in this large courtyard, must have been at least 200 to 300 peasants, all training and practicing under the watchful guidance of a few samurai elders. One of the samurai spoke as he passed her. "Those are not real samurai, child. They are just in training. Giving them what knowledge we can give in the short time we are given to overthrow the Suzaku." It made sense. The Suzaku, being the current government, had the country's armies to call upon, and these rebels had only themselves to put on the line for what they fought for. And it was for that only that they needed all the help they could get. The fort was rectangular in shape, just a small portion of it sticking out of the mountain. The portion being the gate, the two corner turrets, and the small soccer field-sized courtyard. The rest, as the two genin found out as they went deeper in, was hidden inside the mountain. Though they found numerous, large buildings cut into the wall, along with rooms and other compartments, both of them noticed that there were no women, no children, no elderly among the inhabitants of the fort. It was as if this fort was only meant for men who would go to war. A few turns through the maze-like tunnels of the fort, the three arrived in a spacious and well-lit cave along with two futons. This, I believe, is for Kakashi-san and Uzumaki-san. The room next door will be Haruno-san's. I'm sorry, but she is the first female to ever be housed in this fort, and some things we will need for her to point out to us so that we can correct it. I'm sure not all of us know a young girl's needs," said Masato as he bowed. "Masato-san," spoke Kakashi, referring to Masato with his given name rather than his family name, since Kanika-sama would now refer to his father. "If possible, I would rather meet your father first and then scout around a bit before we lay down to rest. That is, if that's okay with you." Masato nodded. "I'm sure that can be arranged, Kakashi-san. Will it be only you? Or will the children like to come along?" Naruto and Sakura both looked towards Kakashi, both eager to hear everything straight from the rebel leader's mouth. "They will come along," said Kakashi. "I'm sure they will have questions that they would like answered," finished the silver-haired Chunin. Masato nodded. "This way then," he said as he exited the room. Team 7 of Konoha were finally on their way to meeting the head of the rebel movement and what was surely to be the start of their first real mission outside of Konoha.
That's all for now. If you want to see next part, then please like this video and subscribe my channel. Thank you.